Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and joining me today is Robert Glazer. Robert is the founder and CEO of the global partner marketing agency called Acceleration Partners, a massive company, over 200 employees. He's also the author of several books, including Elevate, Friday Forward, Performance Partnerships, and How to Make Virtual Teams Work. Today, we're going to be talking about two things. So, how he's using his books to grow his agency, how he's marketed his books so successfully, that sort of thing. But then also affiliate marketing, aka partnership marketing, and how you can use it to sell more books. So, Robert, great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Chandler.
So let's start off. You're running this massive company. You're scaling. You're obviously a busy guy. Why books? Like, why are books such a big part of your business and such a big part of your life?
Yeah, I mean, it sort of happened our strategy very early on from a marketing standpoint was to lead in thought leadership and through thought leadership. And I think we had published, some pretty controversial articles for our industry, had sort of taken a stance on things. We also really felt that the industry was on the big precipice of change. And when we were talking about this, 4 years ago, we were like, look, that we should really like put a book out there and say, this is our viewpoint, this is our calling card. And when we started, thinking about that and we came up with sort of this notion of performance partnerships and really sat down to do that. And then through that experience, I just realized what a valuable thing kind of writing and content is. I also had started this note to my company, which every Friday, which turned into this thing, Friday Forward, which a couple 100,000 people. So I just saw the value of someone once said, oh, you guys have the barbell method of selling. And I was like, what's that? And they're like, great thought leadership and great delivery. Like, we never really sold a lot. Like, we got a lot of referrals and we tried to write interesting, compelling stuff that made people say, oh, I like these guys, I want to work with them.
That's awesome. I was writing that down. The barbell method. I love that. So why thought leadership? I mean, I have a hunch just because I know the kind of the agency world a little bit, but why was thought leadership something that was important to you and with these books? And then I'll ask a follow-up question.
Yeah, I mean, different purposes. So I think particularly in the affiliate industry, there were a lot of misconceptions. There was a lot of like, oh, I tried this, scam me otherwise. So our book actually, like the first third of our book was like, here's the sordid history of the industry, and we agree with you. So it was called the sort of, the subtitle focused on the past, present, and future, and so it allowed us to sort of say, yeah, we, rather than having this conversation over and over again, we say, yeah, we agree with you. Like, here's what went wrong, here's where we are today, and here's what's exciting in the future. And it just felt like it'd be easier to like have a platform that said that for us rather than repeating the same discussion kind of over and over again.
That's smart. Right before we started this interview, you were talking about there were different purposes for each book.
Yeah.
So you got 4 or 5 books now. What was the purpose for each book? Like, how did each one kind of fit into your strategy and for your business?
Yeah, I mean, performance partnership was a platform book for our business. Like, frankly, like, it's great if people buy it, but it's more important that they read it. Like, I don't care if they buy it, I'll sell it to them, we'll give them at a conference, sling it to them. Like, it's a live business card for sort of how we think in our platform. The other books, I was really focused on impact and reach. And again, it wasn't necessarily money, because you don't make a lot of money on a book unless you're Malcolm Gladwell or maybe Adam Grant. But when I with my audience and global and reach, like, actually self-publishing was not the right solution, for those. And so I took very different strategies. Like, the other books, I wanted to sell books because I wanted to get them out there. The performance partnerships, again, I mean, it's become a training book at some companies. Like, anyone who wants to learn about our industry, I'm happy to just send that book to them. I always feel like it's a $3 business card. That's how 100%. I look at it.
And it's a $3 business card that they won't throw away.
Yeah.
Whereas, obviously, it's like you give people a book and they're not going to throw it away. They keep it in their home. They keep it in their office. Every time they see it, they think of you.
There was no book in our industry. Wasn't a book about the industry. There are a lot of books like Get Rich Quick on affiliate marketing, but that wasn't for merchants. So the thing that I didn't expect is that there's a lot of publishers and affiliate networks and all that stuff, and there just wasn't an industry book. they all buy it, and it's like mandatory part of their training to get people like
Interesting.
ramped up on the industry. So I even hear on LinkedIn from reps and stuff, and they're reaching out and say, hey, we just had to read your book as part of training. And so like that's great that that's a
Yeah.
training material, at partners out there.
Yeah. Hey, you mentioned the different forms of publishing. Did you self-publish all of them? Did you traditionally publish all of them? Was it a
I self-published the first one,
Mhm.
and then I worked with a publisher on the other two called Source Books, who's
Mhm.
who's who's smaller. They're kind of right below the big five, and they're very flexible. Actually, they're
Mm.
willing to just test a lot of stuff and do some of the things that self-publishing giving you, like 99-cent ebooks during launch. Like most
Mhm.
publishers just won't do that, and it's a
Yeah.
huge tool to kind of get that momentum in the first couple of days. So they're a traditional publisher, and they're taking care of the inventory and getting it out there, and I don't have to worry about that stuff. But they are definitely bring a lot of flexibility and are willing to try stuff. The other thing they were willing to do, like we put QR codes in the books, brought people to the website for
Mm.
follow-up stuff. Like that's
Nice.
a lot of stuff that some traditional publishers just won't do.
For sure. And what was the thought process behind self-publishing the first one, and what was the thought process behind going with source publishers to publish the other two?
Yeah. So what I realized quickly, like with paperback and Kindle, like audio, pretty easily to just get those like globally distributed. Hardcover books, it's a totally different world. So I didn't really want to manage all the logistics of that. As I mentioned, so for performance partnerships, we put it up there. It doesn't need to be everywhere in every country. People can get the audiobook. We warehouse them. We bring them to conferences, like, because it's really tied to our business. For my other books, we're sort of personal thought leadership platform. Again, I had a day job. I realized like I really didn't want to be in that industry. I was actually kind of shocked when I'm sure 5 years later it's better, but like dealing with POs from Amazon and hardcovers and warehouse, I was like, oh my God, this is like 1910, like in getting these books around. I'm like, I don't want to be doing this. So I think like I think the folks that do self-publishing a little bit, and they're not being misrepresenting, but when they're giving you like, hey, here's the cost structure of your book, like for self-publishing, that's sort of like printed, but like there's warehousing, there's moving them around. We've had events canceled. It's literally more money to ship the books back than it is to give them away. So when you start, when you start adding all those things up, like I actually realized, well, if I want the book and I want to be like give it out, one of the things that I just negotiated for was just a really aggressive author rate. And you can start looking at the math, at that point and think about US royalties versus world and say, look, I know I can do these at $2, printed, but like, if it's a $15 book and I can get 70% off, like, and that's pretty much on demand, I don't have to handle all this other stuff. Like, is that worth it to me?
That's nice. That's cool. So how I want to just briefly touch on writing, and then I want to go into a lot of
Yeah.
marketing stuff and partnership stuff. You're running this massive company that's scaling quickly. Like, how do you have the time to write these books? Any tips for other people who are very busy
Yeah.
running, scaling companies, like how they could find the time to write a book?
Well, I worked with Scribe on the first two books we talked about, and I think
Mhm.
that was helpful to understand that process. And since then, they've actually made the whole process available for free. Like if you
Mhm.
want to read the whole book and go through it, and look, you've got a lot of great stuff. It's just a matter of time. But I think like anything, after I did it one or two times, I sort of got it. I think the big thing is a lot of us. This is true for goal setting, and I think book is one of those. A lot of us sort of picture this Mark Twain go to a cabin for 5 weeks and a book pops out. That's really not how most books get written. I think it is like figure out your outline, figure out your order, and then like some momentum thing of like 1,000 words a week, 100 words a day. Like that to me,
Mm.
that's just how it
Yeah.
gets written. I have like really good editors I work with, and I like having this assembly line of like I write, send for editing, write the next one, get that one back, and it's kind of like this ongoing assembly line. I try to write and edit by chapter rather than like write the whole book and then edit it,
Mhm.
because sometimes like the edits aren't just copyright, they're structural, or this is in the wrong place. So I tend to like, rather than get a whole draft out, kind of really kind of edit, write and edit by chapter.
Yeah, that's great. Now let's switch gears back to marketing. Have you marketed your book successfully? I mean, what's sold the most copies? It looks like Elevate hit USA Today, Wall Street Journal bestseller. Like anything that you've seen that's kind of in your playbook to selling copies?
Yeah, look, marketing is so much harder than writing the book. I think and everyone, the couple of things you hear, when I was always interviewing people, I would ask top 5 and bottom 5% questions. What are the 1 or 2 things you did that totally blew away your expectations? And what are the 1 or 2 things that like you wasted a ton of money? And look for themes on that. In each book, I've gone back to my launch plan from the last one. And I'm like, what was the 80-20? Like, how do we cut out a bunch of this? So, it's really trying to get a lot of artificial demand. I mean, for Elevate, I called in 5 years of favors of both my list and cultivating that, having some urgency, going to friends, like getting their help with their list. I made Google Docs. Like, people are lazy. So I think the easiest that you can make it for them, I'll write the article. Here are the banners. Here are the things. I mean, one of the things I learned from book 1 to book 2, and I've told other authors this, like, don't kind of bother people a lot in advance of when you need them. So like, if you need something on launch week, or you want people to promote on launch week, like telling them 2 weeks before you're going to ask them next week, telling them the next week you're going to ask them, like, just go for the urgency. Like, hey, it's launch day. Like, I need your help. Here are 3 ways you can help. Here's the doc. I did it all for you. I mean, if you want to secure newsletters and stuff in advance or podcasts, sure. But I actually think, like, particularly going to your list, you want to go with urgency. Like, and I think urgency is launch week. So my last book, we didn't even really go to the list until it was out.
That's great. I love the urgency on launch week. I've got this great original question, Robert, that I just came up with. What were your top 5 and bottom 5? So if you look back, what was the 80-20 for your marketing plan? And then was there 1 or 2 things that you said, hey, I wasted a lot of time on this. It didn't really convert as well as I would have liked?
Yeah. So I mean, you've probably heard this, but like, PR is not going to sell books at all. It can help you with speaking. It can help you with credibility. But I think, understanding specifically the PR that would work and not work. Like, I already had a lot of press. I didn't need volume. So I really try to narrow down the strategy. But PR does not sell books. You'll hear everyone say that. But what's tricky is you might have someone who it helps them get a $30,000 speaking gig. So you got to, again, understand your motivation. I think with a lot of things, it just came down to quantity versus quality of going to the 4 or 5 people that had lists, and getting them to do things. We did something with Blinkist that seemed to work really well. And I've just gotten really religious about podcasts around, asking the tough questions about their audience. And look, everyone comes up with some made up statistic, and I always beat up the PR firms. They're like, Chandler wants you on his show and he has 10,000 listeners. And I'm like, that's not a stat. Like, what is that? How many downloads per episode? If you're going to do podcasts, you want to make sure that people are on the other end. And I think a lot of the podcast hosts aren't very honest, or I would say kind of intentionally vague about their audience. So you can see the spike. So I just got a lot more specific around, is it either a dead-on demographic? Does it have volume? Is it the right people? I think when you're first doing it, you just get excited to get on podcasts. And look, if you haven't been on any before, you got to kiss some frogs before you can get to the prince, and you got to do some of the B ones. I think the other thing is that works. It's just a lot of work. Is if you speak or you do something like that, building a package, trading it for books, building all that up, and then getting it bought and launched during launch week. So you're trying to artificially take 6 or 9 months of demand and redirect it into those first couple weeks.
Got it. Those are great tips across the board. You mentioned the thing with Blinkist that worked well. What was that?
It was like a Blinkist minute where they did kind of a thing on new books, or kind of like a couple minute thing. They sort of had a new book launch thing. So that was pretty effective. But it was even like, from my second to third book, we went back and looked at, which newsletters moved the needle, which podcasts moved the needle. Like, I asked 10 people to do the same thing and 2 had success with it. So it was just really going back and evaluating what worked. The other thing that I just don't think works is, and I've heard it, is, even like paid Amazon and paid, so like you can't measure any of these things. You can't get conversion data. So it's really hard. What does work is these news, if you have a discounted book, there are newsletters you can sign up for that email a bunch of people about discounted books. You can try to do those all on the same day. And that moves a lot of volume. Again, you're not going to make money, but it moves volume, moves the list. But I haven't heard anyone say that they crushed it with paid search or with Amazon paid marketing, or I think it's very hard to do any sort of paid marketing without conversion data.
Well, not during, so I think this probably has changed since you self-published, but so now there is really good data inside Amazon and you can use it, but it's not a launch week thing, right? It's the post-launch, like, okay, we're going to consistently
sell.
I
want to be shown next to this book or otherwise, or Amazon, you can get data, but you can't, if you want to do Facebook ads or whatever, but you're selling into Amazon, you won't know what your conversion rate was. You won't be able to know what a good ad was. You'll know what your click rate was, but you won't know what your conversion rate was.
100%, which I think is a huge flaw. And the upside to Amazon is that you actually have those conversion tracking data. The downside
is you stay on the Amazon advertising platform, right?
Exactly. Yeah. If it's strictly, so the downside is that you don't own the lead. The upside is that you do have the conversion data. And then probably the other downside is it's just tougher to scale. Because there's less inventory than say running through Facebook or elsewhere.
The other practice that's really helped in the long run, which is super simple, admin. I took this from Michael Bungay Steiner, who wrote the Coaching Habit. He's got a great article on how he self-published almost 1 million copies now, and he was like, "Here's my playbook." But researching writers who had written reviews about similar books, reaching out, offering them a copy of the book, following up. Like the hit rate's pretty high, like 20 to 30% of just getting books out to authors. So I think it's this, running your own lookalike audiences. Like, what other podcasts have people been on? What other books are they running? Like, get them a list. Someone just told me today she asked for all of the podcast outreach and all the press outreach where the PR firm had not heard back. She gave it to her EA, told them to follow up with a direct tweet, offering a copy of the book, and saw 50% conversion ratio on that on that list. So I mean, some of it's just follow up, but not follow up like, did you get the thing from last week? Like that's like, I mean, you get all these, like it's a form letter, then it's a form letter of the form letter, then it's like even if it's a template to be personalized, like spend 5 minutes on, I saw you wrote a review on this book or this episode of the podcast, just because, I mean, you've been on the inbound side of these. There's so much formulaic crap that it actually doesn't take that much to rise above it. Like if you send me a request to be on my podcast and it actually has one font color and size, like you're already ahead of the game. Like most of them look like they were cut and paste, like without any, I've gotten that, so-and-so Rich would love to be on insert podcast name here. I'm like, awesome job there. I hope that's working for you times 1,000.
Yeah. One thing I do that I think not a lot of people talk about is LinkedIn request with a message. And just talk about a blue ocean. Most people have, at this level, a lot of people have executive assistants filtering their email, but they don't have people filtering their LinkedIn. Right? And so it's just like that small thing rises above the noise in a lot of cases. And I can get, big podcast guests, things like that. I was just like, hey, I need 45 minutes. I'll make it super easy. I'll schedule around your calendar, like all that stuff, and it works.
And just make it personal. Again, the subject of my Friday Forward this week is called Scaling Lazy. And it's like taking a crappy process and scaling it, doesn't just produces crappy result. You don't get incremental benefit of doing something really bad at a high velocity.
Yeah. So I want to backtrack a little bit, and then I want to, jump to some affiliate marketing stuff. So you mentioned going back and seeing what was effective from previous launches. How do you, speaking of the kind of the tracking conversation that we were talking about, how do you track that? Or how do you,
it's a little qualitative and quantitative. So for example, let's say you're on a podcast. There's some podcasts that expect you to be on the podcast, tell them what they want you to talk about, and then do all of the marketing. I'm like, well, wait, why do I want to be on your podcast? I think you can see, like, there was one or two we were on, man, they did weeks of marketing of it, like 20 different, creatives, video messages. Like you almost can just afterwards, you would almost have a spreadsheet and say, all right, how was the actual process of getting on it? But then just to remind yourself, like, did you see them marketing on social after? Were they doing stuff where they were like hoping that you were going to market it to your base? So it's a, and did you see, when did, look, someone should do an Amazon sort of podcast, I was saying, integration to like your podcast stats thing of like, can I, sometimes you didn't notice it. I'm like, oh, like, cause you record months in advance, right? Book spiked this week. This podcast released. Like, I don't have perfect data, but like, that's pretty good correlation. So
Right.
if you have your whole spreadsheet of the ones you've been on, I would put some stuff on the right, which is months later. Like, did we see a sales uptick? Did they market it? Like, was it, and try to, take a look at that. If you're sending people newsletters, to affiliate marketing, try using a tracking link or set up something if you can do that. And then you can at least have a sense of like which ones had volume.
Nice. That's great. I'm switching gears a little bit. So obviously, acceleration partners, you guys are, one of, if not the world's leading partner marketing agency or affiliate marketing agency. So for starters, just let's pretend I have no clue what this is.
Yeah. Like
What
my
is
mom
affiliate and
and
partnership
dad,
marketing?
yeah, partner marketing, which is sort of known as affiliate, but it's become more expansive, is a really simple thing. Instead of paying for a click or an impression, or a sponsor, you are paying for an outcome. So the publisher is taking some risk, and they're either you track it through and they get paid for a sale, or they get paid for a lead or something like that that is conversion based. So you're building a digital business development program with lots of partners, but it's eat what you kill. So it's a great model for anyone selling anything, because you pay for the marketing after you get the sale. And I think look, Amazon's got one of the biggest affiliate programs in the world. If you were talking about this before the show, but if you host a podcast and you have a guest on and you link to their book, you should do it through Amazon's affiliate program. And then not only do you get X% of the book, but if they buy anything else from Amazon during that session, you get a percentage of it. So it's really just a form of digital business development. And we help large brands set up programs that have partner programs that have hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of partners doing this on a regular basis. It's basically enabled by technology that does all this tracking and handles all the payouts and stuff that would have otherwise been in spreadsheets. Before I could say, hey, Chandler, like tell people to do this and I'll give you a code. And then once a month, I'll go in and pull the codes and then I'll send you a spreadsheet and then you send me an invoice and then I send you a check. All of that happens like in real time, payment tracking, all of that stuff through a software or a network.
Yeah, got it. And so can you walk us through like, how did you, or have you used affiliates and partnerships to promote your books? And then how can authors do, kind of use partnerships and affiliates to sell more books?
Yeah, look, if you have your own cart or something like that, or it's on Shopify, there's probably a direct affiliate program. If not, you'd want to direct people to sign up for the Amazon affiliate program and say, hey, look, if you're not part of this, you can sign up here. Every time you link to it, you do that. You can also be an affiliate of your own book on your own website, and you get you can create separate tracking links and say, look, how many am I selling? Now, we were talking about before, like you're not getting data from Amazon, like assuming that person doesn't want their own link. If you send out a newsletter versus a website versus had it here, you could set up 3 different links, in the system. And then you could say, oh, which one is producing more clicks and sales? If you have some sort of course or something that goes with it, most of the course platforms have affiliate marketing. If you want like a very manual way of doing it, anything that allows a coupon code, you could clearly go to and say, Chandler, like here's a coupon code for, and I'm going to go in and look at your codes and I'm going to pay you out based on them. Right. I mean, that's the very old unscalable way to do it. But sometimes it's good to start with an unscalable way. And then if you have 100 partners that want to do that, then focus on making it scalable.
Got it. And so there's Amazon tracking codes for obviously sending people directly to Amazon. And then there's
Barnes and Nobles has an affiliate program, like all the bookstores, bookshop.org does. So you could sign up for all those programs, or you could encourage someone who you're asking to do a newsletter otherwise and say, hey, just so you know, when you're linking to the book, like you can sign up for any of these programs, you can make a cut of this book or anything else that they buy.
Got it. And then can you speak to what are the advantages of selling your book off platform and setting up referral programs there?
Yeah, I mean, the people that are setting up off platform are usually, trying to make, looking at just more margin. So again, I think that's the question of, or they're trying to bulk orders together to make a list, like they're pre-selling and they do it on their website to collect the money and then they want to place the orders. It just depends on your goal and
Yeah.
understanding like how much work you want to do. For most people, like I think Amazon and Apple and whatever, like let them do the fulfillment and distribution. But I know a lot of authors like Michael, and a lot of people have their own cart, but again, then you're managing. You can make more money, but you're managing warehouse and operations and logistic partners.
For sure.
I think you just got to be clear on your goal, right?
Yeah.
And again, what do you want from it?
Begin with the end in mind.
Yeah,
Stephen Covey would
always,
say.
always
Yeah.
quote that phrase. Like
Yeah.
to me, I mean, I keep the performance partnership. It's 99 cents up on Kindle now. Like just to get maximum exposure. I get it, it's more important to me that people buy and they read the book than they buy it for 99 cents versus
Yeah.
4.99.
Yeah, for sure. A couple final questions on, so we're talking about kind of like the logistics, the X's and O's, tracking, all that stuff. Let's kind of throw that to the wayside and just think about holistically partnerships as a
Yeah.
whole. How do you look at partnerships to sell more books? I mean, I know there's like you're doing podcast stuff. You're like any other applicable things for folks of like how they can approach partnerships to sell more books.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is you can come up with anything, right? The other thing you can focus on are who are the people in your book? Do they have a vested interest in your book? Can they help you pre-buy some, sell some? I've done that a few times. I mean, because I've had people in my book who were very incentivized for that book to get out there. They were featured or case studied. So getting them in there, going to their demographic. I think there's always ways to partner by just seeing like what's the value to the other person. Going to an organization, offering to anytime around launch. Most of the speakers I know will do free speaking, free workshop based on a certain purchase level or something that they're willing to do for the organization. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. The question is, again, if you're trying to do something 100 times, then you probably need to focus on it being scalable. If you're trying to do something big a couple times, then you can create some custom partnership for it. But I'm working on this launch. There's a case study in the book that someone wants future clients to see it. So they're buying it, and then I'm offering to do a webinar for their clients or anything like that. Like I just focus on trying to add value,
That's
particularly at the volume level.
That's smart. And I think that's a good place to close the chapter on this piece of the interview, which is a question that you said, Robert, that seems so obvious, but I feel
Yeah,
like on this subject, no, so many people lose sight of this, which is what's the value to the other person.
totally.
And
Yeah.
if you want to think about partnerships, if you want to think about affiliates, if you want to think about getting on podcasts, getting people to promote your book or your business or whatever else, it starts with that question. That's not like
And that should be
question
part
number
of your
5.
pitch, not why is it good for me, but why is it good for you, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it'll be much more compelling. And it's also, it creates win-wins. It creates velocity, momentum, all those things. So start with that question if you're thinking about affiliates and partnerships.
Yeah, and we didn't talk about this. This is non sequitur. You made me think of it. I mean, as you're writing your book and you're doing case studies and you're doing references and you're doing interviews, think about the people that can put people in your book that can help you be successful. Like it's a
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
tactic. Like so, anyone who's got a case study showcasing their business in their book, your book should be a real advocate for your book.
For sure. Yeah. That's great. Robert, this has been awesome. Couple final questions. Knowing what you know now, I mean, you've, whatever it is, 4 or 5 books, another one on the way. What would be your advice to Robert from, 5 books ago and how many ever years ago and all the other Roberts that are kind of out there thinking about writing a book?
Don't write so many books might have been but seriously, something, there's been reasons and timing, but I do think Hal Elrod has really shown this. I think sometimes we over focus on the launch and think we're done. He took him 2 years for that book to be successful. So I have to remember sometimes, even though there's a new one coming out, like Elevate's still going, it's not even 2 years old. It's going really well as a franchise. So I think it's just, play the long game. It a bad book and good momentum will fade quickly. A good book without momentum will take some while. So I get trying to nail those first couple weeks, but it has a life beyond that. If you're writing an evergreen
Yes.
book, I think it's important not to just get caught up in the shiny new thing.
Yes, I could not agree more. And I call this the Toyota Camry approach versus the sports car launch. It's
Yeah.
like most people take the sports car launch approach, all this fuel energy on week one, but create something that's going to last long term. And even on that note, Robert, it's funny. I was just working on this. Is my book published? And
Yeah.
I cut a corner in it because I went through and like marked up the whole book. And then you know the deal. You get so many like of copies of your book at your house that I gave it away. And so I was like working on an updated and revised version and then gave it away somehow.
Oh, you gave out the one with all the notes
like
on
I gave
it?
away the one that was all marked up. And so I went to like go back through and then, so now I just cut a corner. So I will know, like, do not give this copy away. But even now it's like, I could work on the next book, but instead I'm going back through my book published and I'm going to just launch an updated and revised.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I've been doing with my publisher is, because I had a bunch of these books a couple years, going back and looking at what did we market at the beginning and did the books reference each other, and we're updating the back covers and really trying to create more of an ecosystem. Also, really do whatever you can to get a direct, particularly if you're self-publishing, to get a direct relationship with your customer, something that they can raise their hand, get their email, follow up with them. Like, that's the biggest advantage you have from self-publishing.
Yeah, for sure. Robert, this has been great, man. Where can people go to find out more about you, your books, and about Acceleration Partners?
Yeah. So all of my stuff is now integrated at robertglazer, glazer.com. You got the books, podcast, course, Friday Forward, everything on there. Acceleration Partners, probably easier to Google it than try to spell it. If you Google Acceleration Partners, you'll find us. And we have a ton of free, great resources on there. You can even download, I think, the first couple of chapters of performance partnerships if you just want to understand more about affiliate marketing and how it can help your business.
Awesome. Robert, thank you so much, man. This has been awesome.
Chandler, thank you.